Bats can be found throughout the state of Florida, including the Keys. Transportation-related interactions occur when bats use infrastructure for shelter, protection, and breeding. Typical structure types include bridges and culverts. Bats are susceptible to disturbance, injury, and mortality due to bridge and culvert maintenance or construction activities such as pressure washing, waterproofing, deck replacement, widening, and demolition if they are not identified and addressed in advance. Bats are protected by state regulations and, in some cases, federal protections if the bat species is listed under the Endangered Species Act. Bats as a group are one of the most diverse animals on the earth, comprising 1/4 of all mammals. Bats possess several unique qualities, including being among the longest-lived mammals, 10 to 30 years, slowest reproducing mammals for their size, typically only one young per year, and having developed one of the most sophisticated biological sonar systems, called echolocation, to navigate and hunt for food. This combination of a long lifespan, low fecundity, and feeding and roosting specializations means that bats are especially vulnerable to population loss. Impacts to bats, particularly during the maternity season, can have lasting impacts to regional populations. Bats range in color from black, brown, reddish-tan, and gray. In general, they have short snouts, large ears, and fur-covered bodies. Facial appearance for bats is dominated by the muzzle and ears, which varies between bat families and between genera. Wings are supported by the same bones that make up the human hand. The claw on the leading edge of the wing, their first digit, is equivalent to the human thumb. All bats present a similar appearance in flight, dominated by the expanse of the wings, but will vary in size. Florida bats range in size from the smallest, the tricolored bat, weighing 4 to 8 grams, with a 9-inch wingspan, to the largest, the Florida bonneted bat, weighing between 34 and 47 grams, with a wingspan of 20 inches. Physiology of the tail and membrane between the legs also differs between species, based on specialization to feeding, flight, and roosting habits. Additional differences between groups include the length of tail that extends past the tail membrane, variations in ears, and the length of the skin in front of the ear canal. Understanding aspects of bat behavior is necessary to identify where to look on a structure and what species may be present. A bat roost is any place that bats use for shelter, protection, and breeding. A roost could contain a single bat or thousands of bats. Roost needs vary based on the species of bat and may also vary seasonally. Some species have adapted to roosting in manufactured structures, such as bridges and culverts, when natural roost locations are in short supply or regional habitat modifications have occurred. Characteristics of structures selected vary and will be discussed later in the video. Other considerations include the structure's position in the landscape, surrounding land use, availability of water, and level of protection from weather and disturbance. Roosting behavior differs between species, with some species preferring to live in groups, termed colonial bats, with numbers that range from several bats to large colonies of thousands. Other species prefer to roost alone or in small harems consisting of one male and one or more females. Colonial bats seek secure roost sites that make it difficult for predators to reach them, either by being high off the ground or within protective crevices such as those that can be found on bridges and other structures. Solitary bats rely on camouflage and are often found on trees and in Spanish moss. Size of bat roosts, in combination with other characteristics, can be an indication of the species type. Bat vocalizations differ between species through variations in frequency, pitch, and duration. Echolocation calls used for locating prey and navigating are typically too high in frequency to be heard by humans, but can be detected with an acoustic detector, a tool commonly used to identify bat species. These calls can be processed utilizing software systems designed to eliminate noise and identify bat calls. Social calls that occur when the bats are roosting can be heard by humans and used to determine roost presence. However, these types of calls cannot be used to identify species type. These socializing communications used for finding mates and interactions between mother and infant can be heard as squeaking or chirping and may help to identify where bats are roosting within a structure. All of Florida's bat species are insectivorous. Some bring insect prey back to their roost, leaving pieces of insects, usually wings and legs, scattered about. Guano may sparkle in the light due to the insect pieces that are present. These physical observations can be used to identify roost presence. More often, guano and staining are the best indicators that bats are roosting in a structure. Another useful tool is the geographic range map of the different bat species. GIS distribution maps have been developed which identify those species known to use FDOT structures. Although bats do not recognize boundary lines, a graphical depiction is still useful to determine if a species is likely to occur in an area. Bats are not evenly distributed across the landscape. Instead, bat distribution will vary, with some areas having greater concentrations than others. A bat species found on a particular structure is a result of the geographical location and habitat features available. Often, the lack of bat species records for a region is more a product of observational data gaps rather than species absence. Bats move between roosts to support their life cycle requirements. A few bat species have been found hibernating in North Florida caves, but most bats in southern latitudes are active year-round.
Bats have the largest surface area to body mass ratio than any other mammal. Because of this, it requires greater energy reserves to maintain their core body temperature. Bats may enter a reduced state of activity to conserve energy when temperatures drop below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. During these times, bats will seek warmer locations such as bridges that can sustain higher temperatures that are consistent. It is important to avoid disturbing bat roosts during cold weather periods. These disturbances can make them susceptible to disease and predators.
Bats mate in the fall and winter with a single pup born each spring. Maternity colonies gather in bridges and culverts when they are ready to have pups. Most give birth from mid-April through July. Depending on the species, young begin to fly within 3 to 6 weeks. The young are usually weaned from their mothers by mid-July, when the juveniles can fly and search for food on their own. Any roost disturbance during the maternity season may prove fatal to pups that have yet to develop the ability to fly. To avoid disturbance to maternity roosts, state law mandates bat exclusion measures can only be conducted outside of the maternity season, which lasts from April 16th to August 14th. More than half of bat species in the U.S. are in decline, with 3 species in Florida considered to be endangered.
Bat populations are declining primarily to the loss of habitat, through the direct disturbance of roosts, and also disease. Bats are sometimes killed out of fear regarding disease, such as rabies. Also, rapid, unpredictable, and unusual changes in weather patterns or seasonal climate can cause populations to decrease. Another concern for bats is white nose syndrome. White nose syndrome is essentially a fatal fungal disease that is affecting bats throughout the country, in particular cave-dwelling bats. Fortunately, white nose syndrome has not affected Florida bats yet. It has not yet reached Florida, but it is anticipated that fungus could reach Florida eventually. Because there's not large cave populations throughout Florida, the concern is that the syndrome will affect bridges, culverts, and tunnels.
Bats are protected by numerous laws and regulations. Several of these regulations are clearly defined, while others apply to bats under regulations addressing non-game wildlife. Projects that impact bats may require coordination and/or consultation with regulatory agencies based on the specific regulations. All bat species are protected under Florida's wildlife laws. Users should always confirm current version of the laws during project development. For federally listed species, consultation is required with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Coordination is not required with the state agency, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, when addressing non-listed bats. However, it is a best practice. The tricolored bat was proposed for listing as endangered in 2023. It is Florida's smallest bat and can occur throughout Florida with the exception of the Keys. The gray bat is also listed as endangered and is only established in Jackson County in the Panhandle of Florida, although it has occasionally been found in other places in northern Florida. The Florida bonneted bat is listed as endangered as well. It is endemic to Florida and found nowhere else. It occurs in central and southern Florida. This concludes our video. Links to additional videos in the series Bats in Transportation Structures can be found by visiting FDOT's Office of Environmental Management website at www.fdot.gov/environment. Thank you for watching.